feel it already.
Welcome to Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 161. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. Call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have none other than Chris Carruthers from Remote Support Tech Team. How you doing, Chris?
I'm fantastic, Jeff. How are you?
I'm doing excellent.
Good.
He's
Also-
back.
What?
He's back. We're glad to have you back. Also, we have Marvin Bee from MB Systems. Marvin, how you doing?
I am sunny and fantastic.
Awesome, man. And we've got none other than from the great state of Michigan, John Dubinsky from Maven Group. How you doing, John?
I am snowy and better than I deserve.
Yes, it did start snowing today. It feels like a real winter.
The balmy 28 degrees.
All right, and we might have Aaron Michael from Techie Tutors actually joining us. He's having some technical difficulties, but hopefully he'll be able to come in and join the conversation. All right, so John, why don't we start with you? Why don't you share one tip or story with us that we could learn from?
Well, I ran into something that I thought that I probably would have run into years ago. And if I back up, we've been a Dell reseller since probably about 1990, which means we sell a lot of the business class machines, Optiplex and Latitude, to a lot of customers. As in, with a lot of other computer systems, they have the built-in diagnostics. So we had a computer come in, throwing a bunch of errors, having some problems. So the first thing we do is throw it up on the bench, run the built-in diags, find the easy stuff: bad hard drive, bad video, bad memory. And for the first time, I had an interesting message pop up that said, memory errors detected, but successfully recovered. And I'm talking about the RAM in this case, not the hard drive. So I did some research on this, and I know you're going to put a little link in the show notes too, Jeff. But so what is basically happening here is the BIOS, or the firmware on the machine, is saying, hey, we're marking some memory sectors bad because we know they're bad. And then it said, do you want to continue with the testing? And I did. And then I ran it again, and it passed. Short story, though, it didn't solve my problem. I still replaced the memory, which I probably would have done anyways, because I kind of have a rule of thumb. If the hard drive test's just a little bad, like in Crystal Disk Info, or the memory test bad, I just replace them for my business clients, because I feel that's the best way to go. But I just thought that was interesting, and I was surprised I had not run into that before.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, I would have never thought of. I can see
I've run
where-
it 100 times and gotten a bad memory test. I've never had it come up and say, hey, we fixed it for you.
Right,
So,
exactly. Well, I can see in the firmware or the motherboard itself where it could stop or maybe not read certain sectors on that memory chip, but the reality is it's kind of like a hard drive. The memory chip is still bad.
correct.
So, I
I
mean,
agree.
even if it's not reading that portion of the RAM, you basically are going to need to replace it. I think it's great for a quick fix, maybe getting somebody up and running, but yeah, you still need to, if you find out a problem or an error, even if Dell or whomever says, I fixed it, then guess what? Okay, we've got a piece of RAM on order, and you can use it till then. We'll go from there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Good call. Good call.
All right, and Chris, what do you have to share with us, a tip or story for this week?
I'll be writing it up in a newsletter when I actually sit down and do it. But Groupon does not work for computer businesses, or at least not around here. So if you're thinking about using Groupon, I'm going to be really honest with you, it didn't seem to work. Other than that, it's actually been kind of interesting. Holidays seem to slow down around here because you can't see it right now, but there's a blizzard outside, so I doubt I'm going to see anybody coming anywhere near this office today. But we have had a lot of just weird hardware problems. People's kids bringing their laptops into the bathroom and then stepping on the laptop on the way out of the shower type of deal. So screen replacements and just lots of fun stuff. I'm also starting to see another surge on the crypto type viruses. So if you haven't had that talk with your clients, talk to them about not clicking on things, because I'm starting to get sick of cleaning this infection off of people's computers.
And let me know again when that helps, after you've told your customer for the umpteenth time to stop clicking on XYZ and getting this infection.
Yeah. I'll let you know. Although backup sales are going up,
There you go.
so there's that. I guess I don't know.
Hey, when you have lemons, make lemonade.
That's right. Yeah, it's just too bad that lemonade cup is empty and now they have to get all their pitchers redone. But that's fine.
Gotcha. All right, and Marvin, what tip or story do you have to share with us this week?
Well, I will share a story this week, and it basically relates to saying goodbye to a client. And I had a customer that I picked up a couple years ago through a referral, and they didn't quite fit my normal criteria of a customer that I would take on, but because it was a referral, I wanted to at least take care of them, and I thought for the most part that I would just simply have them for about a year, get their network cleaned up, and that would be it. And instead I ended up having them for almost 3 years, and we ended up putting in a couple of new servers for them, getting them up and running. They're the type of company where they only had 4 or 5 people in the office on a regular basis, and everybody else worked outside of the office, so they were all either connecting with their laptops or their tablets to get their mail or whatever. So we just set up a domain controller, file server for their stuff, and then we set up a terminal server for their remote people to log into and work. And then they wanted an Exchange server on premise because their previous hosted mail platform didn't work. And they weren't ready for hosted Exchange or Office 365. I don't know exactly why. But to make a long story short, basically that relationship ran its course because they were getting bigger, and I had told them that once they got to a certain size and they wanted to start connecting offices and this and that, we would have to change some stuff and they'd have to spend more money, get the proper hardware. They wanted to do VPNs to each of their devices individually, and not that I don't like that, but in their particular case, I knew that I wasn't really going to be in a position to support it. They would never let me touch their individual laptops and notebooks, and I'm like, well, I can't put together a network that you can't let me see all the endpoints on it. So right before the end of the year, they were moving into a new space, and as they were moving, they said, yeah, we went ahead and found somebody else that we're going to have do the stuff that we want. And I said, great, that's fine. I'll take care of anything you need. I'll hand him over all the documentation. And I thought all was good at the end of the year. Got, hands-free,
Right.
on to bigger, better things. So got an email on Wednesday with a job where they want to set up a new desktop in the office, blah, blah, blah. And I had to ask, why aren't you using the new guy? Well, he can't do everything we want, and we're going to use him for some stuff, but we still want you to help maintain us. So on one side, I'm happy that I kept the relationship nice and didn't poo-poo on them when they wanted to leave. But on the other hand, I kind of wish I'd have cut those ties a little cleaner. So just a story. I really don't have a nice little wrapped up nice in a bow ending. I normally advocate always leaving the customer in a good manner, whether you fire them or they fire you. Usually it's because I know that if they're firing me, I know it's for a reason that is not a good one. And either they want cheaper service or something like that. And if I'm firing them for being annoying or whatever, and I don't want them. But we'll work with them. We'll keep supporting them in-house until this guy gets their new network up and running 100%, and then we'll probably break ties and say you just can't have two masters, and like Highlander, there could only be one.
There you go. Great.
Hey, B, quick question. Why do you think they're just not handing it to you?
I think probably it has to do a little bit with price.
Okay.
And a little bit with control. A lot of the end users think that they can do everything themselves. They, think of themselves as technical, and they want to be able to install whatever they want, do whatever they want. And I've kind of tried to come in there and say, well, if you're going to put together a network, it can't be that way. You can't have every user be an administrator on their own station, and there's just too many points of possible failure with somebody installing the wrong thing or viruses or probably one of the big. There was probably a turning point where a couple of them had downloaded and installed some free software that they had heard from somebody and it worked, and it stopped working for whatever reason, and they wanted me to fix it. And I said, well, I don't know free software. I'm not going to support that unless you'll pay me to go and do the research. I'll call the company. I'll figure everything out. But they didn't want to pay for me to do that. And then I'm like, well, then you got what you paid for. You got free software, and go get free support from the company. Oh, they won't talk to us. I'm like, well, then you're going to pay one way or the other. So I think that started it.
Wow. It's something else. Again, it's the industry, the people just not wanting to. I guess they just don't think it's important. It's important for their technology, and this is why I always rail against some of these bigger companies that just jump through hoops for the customer. Because I'm gonna say this again. I'm gonna say most businesses, it's really not an emergency. In their minds, it's an emergency at the time, until you say it's going to cost this much. Then all of a sudden, those things are no longer an emergency. But I think with going back to your story, Marvin, I think that if you have a situation where, yes, I believe you should break the ties nicely and stay nice, maybe make it a little more clear that I don't want to work with you or you're not the right type of business for me or something like that. But I agree with you. I don't think you can have two people in there mucking around and have a good solution in the end. It's too hard to work that way.
Yeah, normally we do a clean break because usually there's a very specific reason why the relationship has ended. And like I said, if we're firing the customer, there's no doubt that they're not going to be able to call back and say if the customer's leaving us. It depends. It's sometimes if I know that they're leaving for the wrong reason, for price or whatever, and they're not going to get the support, they'll either come back or they'll be too embarrassed to come back and go find somebody else. So it's a 50-50, I guess.
Right. All right. Well, very good story, and hopefully somebody can learn from that out there. All right. So I had a customer who deleted half a year's expenses in his Excel, Office 2010 Excel, and basically when he's trying to create a 2016 year to start his new expenses for the year. He used an Excel spreadsheet like some other people we know. Me.
I was going to say, are you sure this is a client or you?
So when he had messed up and deleted half the year's worth of stuff, he closed out the file and saved it. So obviously it's saved. Now if you go back to things like, if you go to Windows 7, you can always go, Windows 7 and above will have the previous version. So you can right-click on the file, go to previous version, and it usually saves, I can't remember how many copies, but a few copies there that you can go back to the previous versions if you make a mistake. Well, being on Vista, it doesn't have that ability. So the customer's like, I can't figure all the stuff that I deleted. It's like 6 months worth of stuff. And I said, okay. So I just had a brain dump, and all of a sudden I go, wait a minute. I bet you I can go in the app data folder and find the original version, because there's still going to be versioning of some sort in the system. You just have to dig and find it. So I went in the app data folder, went to the local Microsoft Office, went to the Excel folder, and there was a version 1, which was just the previous version of the one that he saved. And so I was able to recover that for him and get him back up and running within a few minutes. So if you ever have that problem, and again, it's probably going to be a 1 in a million shot, but you can still go back in the app data folder and find some of that older stuff. And hopefully you can recover a file that way if you have a situation like that. All right. And with that being said, let's go ahead and we've got a voicemail. Let's go ahead and play that voicemail now.
Hey, Jeff, Carey again. See, I get a lot of work done in the car by listening to the podcast, listening to Podnutz Pro 150. And I realize this is probably back in October, and you might have already had this resolved, but just in case, you guys are talking about something that really irritates me, and it's that virus-like aggressive marketing that Microsoft has forced on Windows 7 and Windows 8 machines that pops up these annoyances about getting Windows 10. And the file name that activates that is gwx.exe, which of course stands for Get Windows 10, with the Roman numeral X being 10, right? Really common. And there was a registry hack and yada, 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 and you can disable, uninstall the update and hide the update, but the update still comes back. Anyway, great free utility. You can Google it. It's called GWX Control Panel. Anybody can use it. You don't have to be a tech to use it. It's very straightforward. And after some updates, because Microsoft sometimes updates the GWX program itself, it may still come back. But again, as long as you have the GWX control panel, it's an executable file. It's not anything you have to install. And you just very quickly can click the little options to disable what it sees. It verifies you have, and it remedies it perfectly. So really need to get the word out on this utility. If you guys haven't talked about it since, definitely need to make people aware. It's a great free utility, completely portable, and very effective, and much better than, in my opinion, of editing the registry or uninstalling the updates. Anyway, I'm getting back to listening, back to show 150. Talk to you later. Bye.
Oh, thank you, Carey. Appreciate that control panel. I think it's still, even though that episode was way back in probably October, it's still something that's going on and people are dealing with. So definitely, I've heard a lot of good things about that GWX control panel. Definitely check that out and see if that solves your problem. Now, for me and my customers, I really, other than when you restart the machine, it does the pop-up, or if you go to the msn.com as your homepage, it will have right in the center of the browser, it will have Get Windows 10 Update Now. Other than that, on a day-to-day basis, when people are just leave their machines on and they're running their day-to-day business, I don't really have any complaints from anybody so far that's worried about this thing. Matter of fact, a lot of times people are not by accident, they're actually clicking on that and updating to Windows 10, and they're either having a good experience or a bad experience. Windows 10 is fine, but if you have a gunked up system with malware and different things on it and you try to do that upgrade, you're probably going to hose something in there pretty sure. So I always tell people, we'll test it out and we'll see if everything's working, and then if you want, we can do a clean install. I still find the update works okay if you're doing it from a brand new clean install. Anything other than that, it's a 50-50 shot. So, but definitely, if you want to get rid of that thing, I agree with Carey. It shouldn't be there. It should be gone. So get rid of that. All right, let's move on to some emails. It says, hello, Jeff. My name is Adam from IT Professionals of Iowa. I wanted to reach out and say I really enjoy the podcast you do. Keep up the great shows. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate that. And keep listening. All right. This is, from Tony. It says, hey, guys, just wanted to give you a tip on how to stop the pop-up for Windows 10 Update. Theme here. I go into Task Scheduler and disable the GWX task to run. Seems to have worked for my clients for a while now. Used to listen back in the day and have just found your show again. I am absolutely loving it. Tony from Tony's Tech Help. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate the email. And yes, that was another way that a lot of people were stopping that from running. Again, I think a lot of times the Windows 10, if you do any updates on your system, even with the Windows 8, Windows 7, the chances are that it could come back again. Now, maybe he's gotten lucky with the ones that he's done, and it's not been an issue, or maybe Windows 7 and Windows 8 are not getting updated. Don't know. So, but definitely something to check out, see if that will work for you also. All right, third email. It says, thanks for the podcast. I'm a recent listener and have been moving from MSP to a more hybrid approach and even adding break fix. Oh my.
What?
What? Yeah, exactly. My view of MSP is a little different than yours. It's just packaging. Actually, it's not. I believe that from day one since I've been in this business. So in our case, we are combining the automated stuff with remote support and on-site support. So if I'm billing a fixed amount for support, it's all included, other than hardware or parts. Makes sense. What I'm doing now is including an optional hybrid approach that includes the basic stuff: patch, AV, backup, performance tuning, monitoring, remote help desk. We use Continuum, and maybe a few hours of on-site support, and everything else is billable. It keeps the price lower for the client, which makes an easier sale, plus it protects my downside, as I've had some months where a full fixed fee MSP client has hurt me from a money-time perspective. I used to have a more dogmatic views about how MSP practice should operate, but I'm not so fixated on that after being in business for 7+ years. The key is to be profitable, but also be available and have the right tools in place to help people out. We focus on working in the financial industry for the most part, but we see a lot of upstart investment companies that are looking for more flexibility in plans, and even others that have no physical locations, which makes the support model different anyway. And that is from Rafi. And I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce your last name. Rafi, appreciate the whole email there about the MSP. And it's funny that you sent this out because this is our subject for today. And what we're going to talk about is building our managed services. Maybe defining that target audience, finding tools, setting the options, and selling the service. How do we do this? And we have all these people on the panel today so that they can share their different approaches for how you can do a business. And I'm going to say this again. Most people that are in this business are a hybrid business. Most people are not true MSPs, and we've defined all that kind of stuff before. But let's talk about today. What is it that we can do that's going to work for us in our business, whether you're a single tech, whether you have employees, however you do it, there's many, many different ways to do it. So we're going to kind of bite down and take a chunk out of a lot of the information that's out of there, and a lot of it, which in the MSP world anyways, I believe is a lot of misinformation, but that's another day. All right, so Marvin, as far as an MSP model, how do you break these services down and support your customers in a fashion that makes sense for your business?
For the most part, I've never really categorized my stuff as MSP. It was basically, in the beginning, simply on-site or remote.
Right.
And whatever tools that I could get to help me do the remote stuff better and faster is what I added to my toolbox. Now, with the emergence of the RMM and the MSP tools that have come out over the last years, it's been easier to add tools to the toolbox and basically find one tool that can do multiple things. So in the most part, in terms of how I do it, that's it. I think the bigger thing is for people to know that, the traditional MSP lingo has always been about building your business model around the tools. But one of the things that I would suggest to techs is you've got to build your tools and your business around the customers that you're going to support and how you're going to support them. I think a lot of techs have found that they've gone out, purchased a tool, thinking that that's going to solve all their problems, and then they find out, either it's not, supporting the customers in the right way, or they find themselves spending more time monitoring the tools than supporting their customers, and it's just a no-win for either side. So I think it's going to get better. I think there are some tools that are, being introduced now that make it a lot easier for techs like us to get into that market space and to be able to provide, more options as part of that package.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of different ways to skin that cat, so to speak. So, John, what is your take? Because you have a similar business to Marvin as far as supporting your customers, and how do you find the best way to do that is for your business?
I can't disagree with anything that Marvin said. I'll probably just add some things to that. I think the problem that most people or most techs like us, when they start to think, well, I'm going to be a managed service provider, is they do just what B said. They go out and buy a tool, usually a remote monitoring and management tool, and then say, hey, I'm an MSP because I have the tool. What they really forget to do is define the scope and define the word of managed. So they don't understand that the term managed means that you are going to be in charge totally of whatever that scope of work, meaning what you've committed to take on, and that is what you're going to service. You know, just having the tool doesn't change your model, but when I contract with a client and I set up a managed service for them, or if I'm on a fixed retainer for them, I commit to managing a scope of work for them that is now my responsibility. So there is nobody in the organization that is handling that managed service. I am handling that managed service for that client. So it takes the break fix out of the equation in that I need to monitor and manage and react and hopefully anticipate the problems that are going to occur in that organization. So I'm not just waiting for something to break. I'm looking at logs. I'm checking things out. I'm monitoring users so that I can anticipate problems, report those to management, and or fix those before they happen. So in order to be a managed service provider, you have to take control. You have to be in charge of that undertaking and scope of work. It's not just purchasing the tool and moving forward, in my opinion.
No, you've hit it exactly on the head, because I think a lot of people will buy a tool and basically they will do the same things that traditional break fix does. And now this is not everybody, but they will sit back, and when something breaks or the customer goes, hey, something's not going on right here, I need you to come in and fix this, then we'll remote in or go on site and fix that problem, which that in and of itself is still a break fix model.
Yeah, to me, you just did an equation which still equals break fix. It's broken, I'm fixing it. You know, if you're going to be an MSP, you have to anticipate that fix. So you're monitoring what is happening so that you can anticipate the server load, the load on the routers, the load on the endpoints. You know, you've already seen that there's been a virus that's quarantined, or something's happening, or something's been triggered. So you're anticipating or reacting before the break.
Right.
So the math is a little different, I guess, is the way you'd look at it.
Exactly.
And then you have to add on your process at the end of that, because your process might be a little bit different versus break fix if in a mix. So how can you fix that problem without interrupting the end user?
Right.
Because if you're going to contract for a managed service, usually you're contracting for some sort of service level agreement that says, hey, we're going to make sure that you're up this percentage of time, whatever that might be.
Which will never be 100%.
There's nobody in the industry I know that says we'll be up 100%.
No.
5 nines, 8 nines, 10 nines, you know.
Yeah. And we'll get back into it in a minute, but yeah, that goes with some of the what customers are also willing to pay for that type of support and for that type of uptime. You definitely have to put the things in place, and if they don't take our suggestions, then it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah, so those SLAs they're going to be different for every customer, I think. Chris, now from a standpoint of managed service provider, maybe from more of the residential side, because I know that's where a lot of your business comes from, what things do you see that work well in yours or your customers' businesses?
Well, trying to make sure that the user has as little access to their own computer as possible, I think would probably be the best way to fix a lot of problems. What I find, what everybody's saying is absolutely true. You need to make sure that every single little piece of what it is that you're doing in your service plan is clearly identified to the client, whether they're a business or a residential customer. It doesn't matter. Make a difference on that. So, as an example, right, we do the antivirus, unlimited virus removals, and the Windows Update management, right? So the expectation that we set to the customer is, look, if your computer is going to break, we're not watching for that. right? If we get an alert that your hard drive is failing, we'll let you know, right? But I'm not going in and testing your hard drive every other day because you're not paying us for that type of service,
Right.
right? So you have to sit down and say, this is exactly what we're going to do for you. Here's how much it's going to cost, and here's how it's going to benefit you. If you can't do that, then you don't have a service plan. What you're just doing is charging somebody a monthly fee for a piece of software to sit on their computer and hopefully do the job. So that's the biggest thing there. You should also ask your customers what it is that they're looking for, right? If they want a certain type of service, maybe you can fill that void, maybe you can't. But if you don't know what they want, you don't know what to offer them. You also don't want to offer them anything that you can't deliver, right? That 100% uptime, no way. There's no way you're going to be able to offer that to anybody. So that's kind of how we approached it. We kept everything really light. Residential customers don't need a whole lot, and they're not going to pay for a whole lot in the first place, so you can't overburden them. And just keep pitching. Okay. Because if you keep pitching the service, people are going to buy it. Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward when it comes to residential. I think I'm not going to have nearly as much to offer as everybody else, but that's what you need to look at when you're looking at residential home-based businesses.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said, even for those people, because I still have this belief, if you're using some sort of an RMM tool or you're providing antivirus, the problem I have with a third-party antivirus, as far as something that you can buy off the shelf, is that whatever happens with it happens. I've seen all of them get infected. You name a company, I will show you an infected computer. It's just the way it is. So part of the process of where infections and different things come in from the residential side is going to be through some of these different things like Flash, like Windows updates, all these security things that are supposed to be being updated all the time, which a customer a lot of times will never do. And from that standpoint, I believe some of these RMM tools are set up to where you can take care of those things, make sure that your Windows updates are done, make sure your third-party updates are done, make sure you have an antivirus that's working. And again, like you said, you're not in there checking their hard drive. Now you can set things up to, if you have a smart failure, it will let you know. But how many hard drives have you guys seen over the years where even things like smart don't say anything? The hard drive just goes, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah, well, you're relying on Windows to make a report at that point, right?
Exactly.
So, good luck. But, you're right. A lot of it has to do with making sure that computers are kept up to date, making sure that, Java, Flash, all of that is updated, blocking known websites that are attack sites. So there's a lot that you can do on the system side to help prevent infections in the first place. And that is key to making sure that the number of hours that you're putting into serving those clients doesn't wind up making you less money than if you just did the virus removal in the first place.
Right.
Because the customer being happy and the customer not getting infected and all of that, that's super important. But if I would have spent 6 hours doing virus removals for somebody, at $120 a pop, let's say, but then I wind up spending 12 hours managing their system for the same amount of money, it's not worth it, right? So you have to make sure that absolutely your automations need to be in place. You have to make sure that you're keeping up on those updates, not just leaving them. The last thing you want to do is leave updates for a couple of weeks because you're going to wind up with an entire dashboard full of systems that have infections.
Right.
So keep up on it. Make sure that you're doing what you're telling your customers you're going to do. But like I said, don't overburden yourself. Don't promise them that their printer is always going to work, because unless you're going to charge extra for that and start adding on extra things onto the bill to say, yeah, no problem, we'll monitor your network printer, but it needs to cost money.
Right.
If you're doing it for free, you're just going to put more time into it, and eventually you're going to find that your managed service plan isn't profitable for your company, which is a detriment to your customers just as much as it's a detriment to you. If you're not making money off of the service, you're eventually going to go out of business.
So I think from that, there's definitely a difference between what we're doing for residential side and what we're doing for the business side. Now, John and Marvin, how do you guys figure out how to put together a plan that's going to support your customer? And is it always the same plan, or do you have to make adjustments depending on what that customer needs?
Well, I'll say that it can never be the same plan.
Okay.
You can have a template that you can go into based on the type of clients that you have. Again, it does depend on your clients. And because in business you could deal with different verticals, a law firm is going to have different needs than a medical firm or a accounting firm. So you almost have to define your template based on those markets. And I have to some degree a framework of first knowing what my costs are going to be to support that customer, and that's going to take into consideration the servers, the workstations, the applications, the user habits, all of those things. And in terms of putting together a plan, you almost have to tailor it for each customer. Now, with the RMM and MSP tools that are out there, you can kind of be within a few points, plus or minus, because if you get the right tool, you can choose to use certain parts of that tool or not use certain parts of the tool. And there's some tools where it's going to cost you the same no matter what you use it for, and you may only use it to monitor the up and down time of a server and antivirus, and it's going to cost you X amount of dollars. But the tool may also monitor services. It may also monitor other parts of the server that you can use as an add-on down the road, in that sense. So the only difference that I will say is and John will probably be able to attest to this, is it's a lot easier for us to standardize what we're doing for our customers for the most part. I would probably say 90% of my customers, I can purchase the same models of servers and desktops for my customers no matter what industry they're in. And I can standardize my support because I know that I've got pretty much the same HP computer, plus or minus a year or two of a model in all my customers. So I know if I have to send somebody else on site to a customer, I can tell them, look, this is the computer you're working on, this is the way it's supposed to look, this is the way it's supposed to act. And it's easier for us to do that. I'll let John jump in now.
To carry on what B would say, I'd say the biggest aspects, yes, every one of them is at least a little different. But what you probably get into more, and I know you do a lot of law offices, B, so you probably deal with all the compliance issues, whether they're medical or what I would say financial, so HIPAA, FINRA, all that, because your law clients probably deal with all those clients. So I do a lot of medical. So I do a lot of HIPAA compliance, which then also goes into PCI compliance, which is the credit card, and so on and so forth. So it also depends on how those customers are using their technology, meaning if they have servers on site, so we have to protect that data on site, or if they're using some sort of cloud backend for either a software as a service, or if they're just hosting their stuff in the cloud. So the variables all come into how those technologies are being used, if they have multiple locations, if people are bringing their own endpoints, bringing their own devices into the building, what kind of compliance matters those businesses have to deal with. So yes, standardization is key to survival with all the endpoints we manage. B is absolutely correct. With all my clients, literally, I'm almost to the point where I'm saying don't bring anything else in unless you let me know first, or I can't support it. So don't bring in a Toshiba laptop you just bought at Office Depot and expect me to integrate it into the domain when it's running some home version of some sort of software, which is not even possible. Or it's going to cost extra if you want to go outside the scope of what I'm determining that what I can manage, because there's just too many loose ends nowadays. The technology has to be controlled for compliance and all these other manners, and just for serviceability and support, period.
So when you guys go into a business and they have, let's say they don't have all the Dells. Maybe they have some Dells. Maybe they have some HPs. Now, when you go in there and you want to and they want you to manage that business and manage their network, do you go in and okay, we need to standardize everything, or are you flexible enough that you can actually make those adjustments and go, okay, we can support this, this, and this, and maybe there's something in there that, like you said, a Toshiba laptop, where we go, but we're not supporting that.
Well, I think it'd be unfair of us, or even probably not even possible for us to go in and say, okay, we're ripping all this out and you got to start from scratch just because I showed up. I mean, B can do that, but the rest of us. But no, but let's be honest. I mean, we can't do that in our own businesses. At least most of us can't pull all our infrastructure out and change. So usually if I take on a new client, it's with the understanding that, hey, I know I want you to get to this point, but I want you to be to that point because I think it's going to better serve you, not just me. Because here's why. This is why standardization is going to help you. It's going to drive down our costs. We're going to have machines that we can either clone or users can move around on with profiles so that everybody is used to the same equipment. We have parts commonality. If something breaks, we can move equipment around. Our service, we have one number to call for support outside of our organization, whether that's Dell or HP. Things are easier to manage with similar tools. So the idea is to increase uptime, thus decreasing downtime and removing cost and loss of productivity. So, that's not going to happen overnight. I don't know if I have any of my clients that are 100% yet, because things change and their businesses change. So, we have to react to that, or they rapidly grow. So the equipment they may have may no longer be good. So we have to rip all that out and maybe put in some new routers to support more locations, or maybe they rapidly shrink because they either sell a portion of their business or business just disappears. So, it's the whole idea is about being agile for your clients so that they can be agile with their customers and therefore pay your invoice in the end. So,
right. No, that's all good, because I've heard a lot of different business owners will say that we need to standardize everything to the point where they do control it from top to bottom. But to me, that might be fine for some customers. I just don't think it's very realistic. What do you say, Marvin?
Well, it's not realistic to be able to walk in and day one say, we can't support you unless you're here. You have to at least look at where the customer is, realize how they got to where they are before you came on board, and they may have been given advice that you're going to have to massage a little bit to get them to understand that. But if we're looking at it from a MSP perspective, and I'll talk about this because I know in another forum that I've been a part of, this actually came up where somebody's trying to put together a flat fee support for a customer, but they've got a custom-built server that was done by some other company or tech before them. And they're debating as to how they can support that for a flat cost, and basically we're saying you can't do that. And the first thing that I would have said is I would never try to guarantee or support something that's custom built by anybody. And for that reason, if you want to give them that MSP or flat fee, retainer costing, you're going to have to move them into something that can be supported, or it's got to be on a hourly basis. Yeah, I'll support it, but that's going to be an hourly, because I have no idea on the quality of those products inside it, or how good they are, or anything. And if it fails, I'm not going to be responsible for something I didn't build.
The other thing there too, if I can add on to that, being not to interrupt, is that you as the managed service provider have to be able to have your tools on that equipment too, like your managed AV and your managed support, if they expect you to be providing that support that Marvin's talking about. Otherwise, it's unfair if they all of a sudden bring a laptop in that you had no idea about and said, hey, here, this is a problem, fix it. So you got to define that in your scope of your managed service that, hey, this is what I'm taking care of. If you surprise me with something else, we'll gladly add it in. But to get it in, to bring it in inside the force field, there's going to be some cost involved with that, especially if
Right.
there's a problem on that machine at that time.
Yep.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good way to define it. And Chris, you and I really don't, as far from a residential side, we really don't have the ability to have all the residential customers on the same thing. So our model for a residential MSP has to be way different because there are so many different models and things out there of computers and things that we're supporting.
Well, and you got to look at the level of support that's being provided in a residential type service plan, right? Excuse me. These guys are talking about, supporting the entire infrastructure, and I mean, best case scenario, here's the fee that you're going to pay every month, and we're going to fix almost anything as long as you don't go outside of this box that we gave you. Right. Whereas, when you're setting up something for residential, at the very best, you're going to say, you know what, we're going to do these 4 things for you. And then if you call me and it takes like 5 minutes, I'm not going to charge you any extra for that because you're a good client.
Right.
That, there is a huge difference in the SLA when you compare the two of them. And I mean, speaking of SLAs, how many residential service plans can you honestly say where they say, hey, oh yeah, and we'll fix it as soon as we can? Now, I mean, mind you, when we say that, I mean, we're same day, next day, right?
Okay.
So it's not like, oh, we'll fix it as soon as we can, and our service plan clients are waiting a week. But we're not guaranteeing 24 hours, right? Whereas, a lot of SLAs with businesses, you're looking at a 24 to 72 hour turnaround time, depending on what kind of a contract they're willing to pay for. So I'm not saying that you're comparing two completely 100% different services. I'm just saying that, they're standing at home plate and we're out in the outfield.
Yeah, no, there's the point I bring this up and the reason I'm drawing the comparison is that there is definitely a difference for what we do for our business end and what we do for the residential end. I think they're both profitable if you do them right, but we need to talk about some of the different things of how we put that stuff together. So from the business side, John, how do you figure out what you're going to charge a customer per endpoint or per workstation or per server to support them, or how do you figure all that out so that it makes sense for the customer but also makes sense to you on a month when the customer their whole business goes haywire and you're in there for way more hours than you should be?
That's a great question. I would say I am an outlier on how I price my services to my clients. In the MSP world, I think a lot of the time you see per endpoint, per server, per device, router, printer pricing, meaning if you have 5 PCs, I'm going to charge you $50 per endpoint, then $75 for your server, and then maybe $5 per the devices on your network per month, and I'll take care of everything. That seems to be atypical or typical for what I see. I do it totally different. I walk into a business, I try to meet the people there first to decide if I think there's a good fit for them and me, that we're going to be able to communicate, because with my process, it takes a lot of trust. And then usually what I do is I come out, and I do not have a set contract. I have a scope of work I present to them, just so there's guidelines. And then what I do is I ask for a year commitment, and I give them a price that I just quote, that I kind of grab and pull out just from based on experience, having done this long enough to know what I'm going to run into. And then I tell them, you're really paying me not to see me. I'm going to come in here and we're going to get pizza once in a while. I'm going to bring you some donuts. But if you don't see me, that means you don't have any problems.
Right.
When you and I are going to talk, it's going to be that we're planning for your growth. I'm going to come in and we're going to do maybe an assessment, and I'm going to try to convince you that we need to do this and do that to improve what's going on. I also, in my plan, is I don't upcharge for hardware. So anything that I sell the customer, they get at my cost. And I usually add on about 2.5%, which I tell them just to cover incidentals, if I got to unpack it, if I got to dispose of everything, just incidental cost. Because what I want them to know is what I'm recommending and what I'm selling, I'm not making money on that. I'm selling them that device because they need it. It's not because I want to make some money on a new router or something like that. It's because your business needs it, and this is what I would do in my business if I was running your show. So I'm a little bit outside the box on that and the way I do that. But that's worked for me since 1995, and that's the way I started doing it when I got lucky and I started this. So
Okay. No, I think it's a great plan, and it's a great outlook on how to, again, you're showing something that works for you and your business, and I believe there's other people out there, depending on their area and different things, that can do the same types of things. I just don't think a lot of people know that, hey, oh, wait, there's another guy that's doing it like me, and so I know I can be profitable and have a good business because of that.
Well, I try to always roll back to the trust factor, and that's why I don't have a contract. And that's why I always say we're going to have open lines of communications. You know, if all of a sudden you're going to add 20 new endpoints and 3 new servers, then obviously your price is going to go up. But I want you to be able to have the flexibility to also say to me, John, we're shrinking, so we're pulling out 4 of our 6 servers and closing 4 of our locations. And I'll say, okay, no problem. It's not a problem. We're here to make sure your technology supports whatever it is happening in your business.
Okay.
You know, the IT shouldn't be a burden to the company is the whole idea behind my plan. The IT should enable the company, period.
Absolutely. No, I agree.
And that is tough to do with compliance and all that. Nobody likes to talk about that. Nobody likes to spend any time on that. So my job is to ease that pain, period.
And I like how you basically pull a number out of the air and say, here's what it's going to cost based on your experience. That's good because, again, apparently that's working for you.
And I'm doing the numbers in the back of my head. I mean, don't be silly. The numbers, I always go back to let the numbers lead you. That is something one of my mentors told me a long time ago. So I'm doing the calculations in the back of my head. Okay, 3 servers, 5 locations, this many endpoints. I've met with a couple of the general managers and the president. I have a sense of what's going on. You know, how many users are there? Are there 5 users at a small company that just are asking me for help, or do I have 100 endpoints in this one building that I'm going to manage? Or, you know, a lot of the times maybe there's already an IT person on site, and then I'm only taking a portion of the responsibility. So, you know, there's all those different factors that come into play.
All right. And Marvin, what about you? How do you figure out what to charge a customer? And is yours probably a little different than John's?
Yeah, I don't pull anything out of the air.
Come on, baby.
I've got 2 different spreadsheets that I use per customer to come up with my money. But it does vary, and a lot of it depends on the customer, because I do have some customers that literally require more hand-holding than others, and they're going to pay for that hand-holding.
Babysitting.
Yeah, and you know, I do. Again, I'm probably not, a model for the MSP world either, because I do a little bit of everything. I do, X amount per server, X amount per computer/user, but then I also will bill based on other things, because if they want me to come on site, X number of times a month, that's one charge. How much can I do remotely is a charge. Because I've got customers that, are law offices, they need a little bit more support because they want to be able to call me, at any time and say, hey, I got to be in trial tomorrow. I need this working. So it may be 5:30, 6 o'clock that they call me and expect me to help get them up and running. So they're going to pay more for that, although I don't bill them extra on top of their monthly plan just for that. I bill them extra if I have to go on site and spend half a day. There'll be a charge for that, just because I can't be doing work for anybody else. If I'm dedicated to you, you're going to pay for a little bit extra surcharge for that. If somebody breaks something because they were trying to fix it on their own, there's a stupid tax that they're going to pay.
I hope that's what it says on the invoice.
Is that in your paperwork?
I have it on my internal paperwork, but it doesn't show up on the invoice as that. I think that's equivalent to the advanced networking fee. that Rainey talks about. But
Yeah.
I actually have a stupid fee that we have inside of our business. So yeah, I think part of the MSP model has always tried to, here's what you charge per server, per computer, per tablet, and a lot of times it just doesn't work. You've got to kind of modify it. I actually bill a customer for simply having a remote office. They get a separate charge because I have to monitor the remote connection between the offices to make sure that their data replicates. Now, the problem is 1 month, I might have to spend 5 hours fixing that if the replication breaks and they start losing data. But then I could go 5 months without having to fix it. So part of, I think, what John was trying to allude to is part of what we charge kind of relates to hoping that it all balances out.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep. So if it's a heavy month, we're not going to tack on extra for them and say, oh, well, yeah, I had to do, because on the light months, we're hoping that it evens out, and we're going to recoup that down the road. So I do that as well, where I try to give them a cost. I do adjust it up or down, based on ad changes, removes, that sort of thing. But I do have a little bit more of a formula to it. I don't show them the full formula. They kind of have an idea. Here's what your monthly cost is, and it's going to be plus or minus based on what happens.
Hey, you said a great word in there, B, if I can interject. You said the word cost. I think the most important thing before anybody starts to set what they're going to charge somebody else is to know their own cost of doing business.
Right.
Meaning, what's it going to cost you to provide the services you're talking about? So, take into account what the money you want to take home and put in your wallet, but don't forget you got to cover your insurance, the tools you're buying. If you have an RMM product, think outside of the box of all those things. Your vehicle, your drive time, your gas, your maintenance, your mileage. If you got to pay somebody else, if you get stuck, even if you don't have an employee, if you get stuck at one client and you have a managed service and somebody else is broken, you better have somebody else to call if your SLA says that you're going to be there. So that's where somebody like Chris would come into play with the service he provides, or maybe you find somebody else local by you. But you got to have somebody at least that can pick up a hose and start spraying some water on that other fire while you're putting out the one you're on. So manage your costs and set your prices accordingly. Don't set your prices first and then try to figure out how you're going to feed yourself later.
That's a great point, because I think a lot of people don't think about the cost of doing business. And because a lot of people are in this, they see that customers don't want to pay, and they have these low-cost solutions, but they're not maintainable. Just like a low-cost support business, even if from a break-fix standpoint, is not sustainable for the long haul. And I think a lot of people forget that because they don't count the costs. They don't count their taxes. They don't count all the things that they need to run their business. They don't count the tools. They just kind of go, hey, I heard somebody else charges this, and so that's what I'm going to charge.
And the big one I see everybody that leaves out is their acquisition costs, so their marketing costs. How much is it going to cost you to get a new customer?
Yep.
Which, if you don't have a good word of mouth network yet, that's very expensive to get new good customers. So,
and I've shared this before. Even from a break-fix standpoint, it costs with Google AdWords right now, it's about $20 to $25 per customer acquisition cost with Google AdWords. Now, a lot of people go, there's a lot of people out there right now going, oh my gosh. And again, I'm in this for the long haul, so this is a slow burn. It's okay. I charge enough to make it worth my while.
And you're just talking about AdWords. What if you got to want your other marketing, like the shirt you're wearing, any sort
That's
of
true.
Anything.
That's true. A lot of that's my pens. No. My
I mean, it all adds up.
You're right.
Like coffee mugs, expensive.
Now, so from John, how do you guys figure out if it's going to be worth your while to go into a customer and take care of them, doing what you? And now let me go back to this too. You've been doing this for 20 years, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you've been. I'll say this out loud. You've been doing MSP or managed services for customers for 20 years. Right? Okay.
Yes.
So with that being said, managed services has not been around since the last 10 years, people. It hasn't been. Don't believe the hype. This is a marketing term that some people came up with and thought it was great because people love three-letter whatevers, which I don't understand because most of the time I have to go acronyms. There you go. Thank you. I don't even know what they stand for. Like, what does that stand for? So, but from that standpoint, so how do you figure out if somebody is not going to be a right fit for you? Are there signs right up front that you see that you can just share real quick?
Personality.
Okay.
It's easy. Just before you get in this type of relationship, there's two ways to do it. Either if you go into a client, some people call it like your spider sense, or if you don't have a good rapport with somebody right away that you feel there's a lot of communication, then I always default back to the side that says, then you need to document everything precisely on what exactly the scope of the work you're going to provide. All right. To me, that's a lot of upfront work, which will drive up your acquisition costs, because a lot of that time then, when you create your contract or your schedule or scope of work, that kind of stuff can go to a lawyer, come back to you, so then you're going to need to give it to a lawyer because you don't want to get stuck promising something because there's some legalese or terminology in that paperwork that you're going to promise to and sign off on, and then also realize it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to provide when you're charging a client $300 or $400 per month. So, that's a big start. The other start is, in my opinion, is always make sure you give yourself a way out. So in anything that you do, say, hey, customer, you can cancel in 30 days or whatever, but guess what? I can leave too. So make sure you have an exit door too.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely. Because you want to be able to leave without them having any recourse on you. And remember, anybody can sue anything for whatever reason they want, no matter how much paperwork is involved. They can sue you for something that it says in bold letters on your paperwork that you're not going to do, and they'll say that you didn't do it, but they'll still sue you.
Right.
So, litigation is always a worry. So you're going to have to determine how far you want to go into the paperwork and down that road. Like you said, I've been doing this 20 years, so I think I have a pretty good feel, and I also have the capability of picking and choosing my clients at this time. A lot of the new guys starting out would like to have any sort of meat on the table to eat, so you got to protect yourself that way. You might not be able to turn down a client, so I understand that too. But the idea is to protect yourself, protect the client, and then I always say it's personality. If I go in and I feel good about the people I'm dealing with, that I'm getting straight information, you kind of just get that good feeling when you walk in. It's just like, I call it the Cheers effect. I feel like Norm when you walk into the bar. It doesn't have to be all touchy-feely, and I have a strong opinion that your customers can be your good acquaintances, but you got to be careful on the whole friendship thing, because a lot of times they want you to go hunting with them or go to the shooting range. I've had all those invites. A lot of the times, I'll attend group events like football games and stuff, but you got to keep it a little professional because there can be hurt feelings and all that too. And I guess that's a whole nother subject to go into. But
yep, you got to keep them separated.
Yep.
Marvin, how do you when you're starting off in the business, can you, because for a lot of people that are starting off and they're hearing MSP, they're hearing break fix, can you start off slowly? And you're not always going to have a choice of customers necessarily, but we've talked about some of the different things that you guys do, but more of a hybrid approach where maybe they come in and maybe they are just starting off with some break fix, and then that moves more into a managed service plan?
Well, the short answer is yes. You can.
But your opinion is?
Well, I'm going to say that there are more tools today that allow for that type of a slow start than existed when John and I got started.
Okay.
There just weren't a lot of stuff out there. We had to basically, hustle our butts off to do the type of stuff that would do that. It took me probably 2 years before I could commit a customer to a monthly retainer.
Okay.
Because in this area, that nobody wanted that. That just didn't exist. It was like, no, we want to be able to call you when we need you, and we'll pay as we go.
Okay.
And it took me finding a small law firm that, the way that I got it was that they were 45 minutes away from me. And I said, there's no way I'll be able to support you on an on call whenever you need it. So I said, either we got to come up with something where, yeah, I'll come out to you once a week and spend a 2 to 3 hours doing whatever, and that's the only way I could support you. And so they agreed. And back then, I won't be bashful to say my rates, but it was a $600 a month retainer for me.
Okay.
10 hours a month at $60 an hour.
Okay.
For me to drive 45 minutes and stay 2 hours a week. And that, and of course, to me that was gold.
Right.
Because that one client just about paid my rent, and then the rest of the week I could spend doing other stuff. So I mean, but today there are so many options that people have to start slow. I mean, a lot of the remote management tools, I mean, they're dirt cheap. I mean, even if you have to spend $5 to $10 a month, that's, if you can charge 75, 85, $120 an hour, you can do it and do it right, and make money today.
Okay.
I also think that a lot of people jump on all these tools and then they imagine what they're going to do and they go charging into a business and say, "Hey, this is what we're going to fix you. Look, we're going to fix you." Just slow down and just go into the business and see what they need fixed before you're going to just throw all this stuff at them. Sort of ease into it and provide them what they're looking for. It's the same problems you deal with. How do you automate their billing for them? How can you alleviate the pain points of printing or remote access? Use the tools to fix that. And then the other services come as you fix those problems and build trust with them. Soon they'll be calling you for their copy machine and their daughter's iPad, and once you'll become the answer man. So then you'll have the information you need, and I don't know if power is the correct word, the trust, to be able to put them in a managed plan, because you'll manage all that for them already. Just make sure you bill for those things along the way, because if you give them all away, circle back and say, okay, now I'm going to charge you this much money per month, they're going to say, well, you haven't been charging us before, why would we pay now?
Right.
So you got to bill for everything. Don't be the nice guy. If you want to give them, take the Rainey approach. If they call, they get a bill.
There you go.
Yep.
And that's not to pick on Matt. That's just wise words, and I'm giving the reference.
No, you need to charge. If your time is worth nothing, then don't charge. But my time is worth a lot.
Yes.
And I still probably don't charge what I probably should, but I.
Well, we're not going to get into that conversation, Mr. Flat Rate. Okay.
Not everything's flat rate, just something. And you know why? You know why they're flat rate? Same reason I pick my hourly rate. It's easy math. So, anyways, Chris, let's end off on this point. I think we've covered a lot of good things on the business side. From a residential side, for doing hybrid managed services, I guess is the best way to put it. How do you figure out cost for doing those things? Because I think it's tough, right? Because a lot of us don't know how much time we're going to have to spend, and some people will provide a service and charge afterwards, and some people do an all-inclusive service. So how do you figure those things out for yourself?
Simple math. No. Here's what it comes down to is you.
What's up out of here?
I just decided
this
one
sounds
day. I don't
good.
know. Well, look, here's what you need to look at. How much money is it going to cost me to provide this service? Right? That's something simple to figure out. If you can figure out how much time you think you're going to wind up spending on it, you're going to have to adjust as you go. I got lucky because I actually figured out time, and I was almost on the mark. So I didn't have to really adjust afterwards. But once you know how long you're actually going to spend supporting those customers, how much money you're going to spend supporting those customers, all you need to do now is figure out how much profit you want to make off of it, where you're going to get a certain amount of a margin without really going too far overboard, and leave room for maybe a discount rate, because residential people, they want to pay for a full year and get a discount. Right. So that's kind of where the numbers came from, where we figured, okay, you know what, $25 a month is affordable for a lot of residential people that want the type of service that we're offering, right, at a retail rate. And I'm talking about retail, I'm not talking about the white label. So, if $25 a month is what we're going to go with, it's $150 for 6 months. I can pitch that, right? I'm not going to give the percentage profit, but I mean, that leaves me with enough of a percentage profit that as long as I don't wind up with, if every single system goes down at once, like it's done a couple of times, because, thank you, Microsoft. If that doesn't happen, we're good. We're going to have months where we're not going to make any money off of it because I'm going to wind up spending way too much time fixing something that Microsoft did. But for the most part, I know that for every 5 clients that we sign up, I've paid for a chunk more licenses, plus I've paid for the time that we're going to wind up spending in it.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where I did my math on it. I need 5 clients to make this work. Can I get 5 clients? Yes, absolutely perfect. It gets exponentially better as it goes, but I need 5 clients to make this work.
Absolutely.
So if you can do that math where you say, okay, look, I need 5 clients. If I'm going to get 5 clients, I'm going to spend this much money to do it. How much money do I actually need to be able to make this viable? And for me, that profit margin worked. You want to go at I don't even want to say you want to go at least 50%, but like that's we looked at our virus removal price, and then we said, okay, well, we're actually charging $129 for virus removals. So double that, and that's about where you want to be, because you're probably going to do 2 virus removals a year.
Right.
If you don't do your job right.
Right.
So
no,
does that make sense? Or am I just rambling?
No, it makes perfect sense.
No, you look at your costs. That's great.
Yep. And here's the thing. A lot of people definitely go back and look at what things cost.
Yeah.
Prices go up. Things change. Make those adjustments and do them slowly over time so that all of a sudden you're not looking at your books and going, wait a minute, why am I in the hole?
Yeah.
I should have been raising my prices slightly or making some adjustments slightly every year or every month or every 6 months, whatever it is you choose, but constantly look at what you're doing in your business. I think a lot of people just kind of, they set a price, because I've done this. We set a price and boom, there we go, we're done. And I could sit on this price for the next 20 years. Well, that's not a real reality. No.
And you do need to be careful with. I'm not saying don't raise your prices. I mean, how many rants have I gone off on raising prices, and make sure you do it.
Oh, almost every show.
Right? Okay. Well, here's a mini one. I'm not going to go too far into it. If you are looking at, you're not going to get it right the first time. Most people won't. So if you're looking at your profit margins, hey, you know what? I'm making like $30 a month off of this type of service. This is fantastic. But 4 months down the road, you realize, okay, I'm making $30 a month doing this, but it's costing me $25. That sounds like a good profit margin until something goes wrong.
Right.
And suddenly that $25 that you're spending every month to keep that service going winds up being $75 one month because something explodes.
Right.
A $5 a month profit margin on a service plan is not good. So that's when you have to think, okay, I could get away with a 15% price increase. Really, I mean, 15% is a pretty good low ball end of that. Let's raise it by 15% on renewal, and we'll see what happens. And I can almost guarantee you that 15% increase, you're not going to lose that 15% extra profit in the number of people that don't renew because of it.
Right. Especially after people have used your business system for such a period of time, whether on the business side or residential, they're going to see the quality that you give, and that's what we want to do. We want to provide that quality that they're going to go, hey, it's worth it for me.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm going to take a page out of John's talk from earlier. Yeah, you didn't hear from me until I sent you an invoice, or you didn't hear from me until I stopped by with that coffee to see how everything was going. So clearly, I'm doing my job.
Right.
So let's take a look at downtime here. And I mean, this works on residential, with residential people too. And you ask them, like, hey, listen, you know what? How often have you wound up dealing with these pop-ups and dealing with all these other annoyances? Because it's not profit loss, let's face it. When you're dealing with residential customers, you need to give them a value that's non-tangible, right? How much less stress have you had using your computer over the last 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, however long it was, because you started our service. Well, I don't know if it's because I started your service. Okay, well, you're not getting those pop-ups anymore, and that was a constant problem for you. You're not needing to bring your computer in for virus removals, which is something that you used to do at least once a year before. Your computer isn't really slowing down all that much because we're making sure that the updates are installing. We're giving you that pop-up to restart your computer for the updates, and we're clearing your temp files for you, right? So we're doing these things for you in the back end. You're not even noticing it, and suddenly you're just using your computer. That's a mind blower for customers. When you point that out to them, if they didn't figure it out themselves, because some of them won't,
Right.
and you point that out to them, a lot of them will just write the check.
Right. Exactly.
Right? Because you're not doing the same thing for a residential customer as you're doing for a business. For a business, you're keeping their uptime up so that they continue to make money. Right? You can show them dollar for dollar, this is how much we've charged you, and this is how much money you could have lost compared to what it was before. For customers, look at how much more you're enjoying this. How much is that enjoyment worth to you? How much is the lack of aggravation worth to you? And if your customer doesn't see that the money that they're spending with you isn't worth the lack of stress and the extra enjoyment, then they don't want to pay money out to anybody, and they're just not worth it as a client. So move on.
Absolutely. All right, well, I think we have covered a lot of different things, and we kind of went a little over time today, but I didn't want to stop the discussion too early. I think we've showed that there are many different ways that you can do your business, and I think each and every one of you needs to figure it out for yourself what it is you want to do. Watch what other people are doing, and what I like to say is, in this, especially in anything you do in life, if you take a little bit from everybody, the good parts that you like, and you put those together, a lot of times you can come up with something that will work for you, how you work, how you understand things. So don't always look at somebody and go, I got to be just like that person, because you don't. You can be like that person, that person, that person, and that person coming all together, and it's going to work for your business. So with that being said, John, if people want to find out where you're at and what you're up to, where could they do that?
Mavengroup.net.
There you go. Nice and simple. Beautiful website. Looks very classy. Much more classy than mine. No,
Eleanor.
there you go. He does good work. And let's see, Marvin Bee, where can people find you at?
maninthevan.net.
There you go. Simple place again. He's got all the information there. Get a hold of him. He doesn't live in a van down by the river, just in case anybody wanted to know that for sure. Not that I know of anyways. We'll find out here in a few months. And Mr. Carruthers, glad to have you back. Where can people find you at and what you're up to?
I'm complicated. You can either go to our website, www.rstechteam.com. You can email us at info@rstechteam.com, or you can call us instead of going to our website. 888-496-2641.
Apparently, it's been a few weeks.
It has. I haven't done that pitch in a while.
All right, you guys can come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/live. Join in on the conversation by calling in live and hanging out in the chat room. We also have audio available over at podnutz.com, or subscribe using your favorite podcatcher. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Computer Repair Podcast. Send your questions and feedback to podnutz@podnutz.com. Or you can leave a voicemail at 1-888-697-0162. And I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Really appreciate what you guys are doing out there. And you can support this show by going to patreon.com/Computer Repair Podcast. I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast. Yay!
Yay!
B, you didn't even get to talk about your books.
Oh,
I just, it didn't really, I didn't have that, entry point to really just throw that in.
Well,
Didn't
excellent
wanna
show, everyone. Good information. A lot of good information that I think people can use. So,
Yeah.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
all of these points. I mean, we could just, we could spend an hour each.
Oh yeah, there's so much to go into. But I think for the most part, I think people, if they look deep down inside of themselves and just think about their business, I think a lot of us just try to copy what other people are doing and hoping that that works, and that's not a real solid plan. So,
No,
in
you
my
can't
opinion,
have a cookie cutter business.
I don't think so. But
No.
there's a lot of people out there pitching that you can.
I haven't thought about this in a long time, but it's just what I said. I can't remember the last time I went into a business, whether it was me trying to sell somebody or me getting called in on a referral or something like that, where I said, here are my 2 briefcases full of what I'm going to do for you, and try to just throw them on them. I basically just gone in there and said, okay, what's going on? I'm here to help. What can we do? What can I do? And then you just do that, and then you instantly have sales because they're asking you for something instead of you trying to sell them something.
Right. I think that's a
So,
great approach. That's the way it should be done.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
but I think everybody, just like you say, Jeff, and I hear you say this all the time, everybody gets so excited about getting an RMM tool and all that and then trying to pitch it. Where I think Chris makes a great point. Well, here, I can remove your frustration, your anxiety, and
exactly
increase your enjoyment.
Yeah, well, it's a different pitch, right? I mean, so that's all it comes down to is that's the. See, this is the thing. My sales background tells me to actually call it what it is. It's the button, right? Everybody's got a button, and that is the button for residential people. If they're willing to spend money on something, it's so that they can enjoy it more.
People want to. That's what I explained. People ask me, how do I not get infected? I said, well, that's an impossibility. It doesn't matter what you do with the system. Here's the thing, though. I can provide you with a service that when you come down to your computer, it's just going to work most of the time.
Yeah.
Now, every once in a while, we're going to have to go back in, and we might have to do a little cleanup. But if we have a good foundation set forth, it's going to not be a really big deal. But now, because a lot of the stuff I get, if I get a Brainly or a new infected system, again, those people, it's been like that for well over 6 months, and it's just like, really? But from a business side, I mean, I've actually seen it on the business side too, but it's a little less tolerable on the business side when you have to do day-to-day work. There definitely becomes a change where it's a little more important. The residential side, a person will come down in the morning, hit the power button on their computer, go make a pot of coffee, get the cup of coffee, come down, and right then it'll be going into Windows, and maybe they can do whatever it is they need to do.
Sweet.
No, businesses do that. They'll come in, turn their computer on, head to the break room, grab coffee, water cooler talk.
And they just tolerate. I can't imagine. I get so frustrated. I'm on my production machine, and I'm on an SSD, right? And it's way faster than a spinning hard drive is. It is. It's not as fast as I would like it to be, but it is faster. And so when I have to go on my old bench machine behind me, which is on a spinning drive, I feel the pain. It's so painful. It's like, oh my gosh. So I built another machine, which is next to me over here, and I'm going to be transferring some things out here when I get a new case, and I put an SSD in there. And so because I want to have that same experience on my production machine as I do my SSD or on my bench machine. So if I'm moving data around or whatever I need to do, yes, it's going to be going onto a spinning drive because I feel more comfortable with those. But as far as the operating system and how it operates, that's the place to be. And I don't understand people that they click on something and literally you wait 30 seconds for it to open up. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How do you do that? But people do it.
Hey, let's see. I got to get running.
Oh, yep. And I think I'm going to end off the broadcast since we went a little bit later today. Have a good week, everyone. We will see you next Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great week.